What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. And before I introduce my very special guest, Dr. Nyeisha Dewitt, first doctor on the show. Although I don't think she's a surgical doctor, but we'll get into the whole doctor thing shortly. First of all, do a little housekeeping. I am from broadcasting live on the Squawker app from the Yellow Jacket Media Studios here in Willow Grove, PA. If you are a podcast host and are interested in joining a podcast network, I highly recommend reaching out to the Yellow Jacket Media guys, Frankie and John. All right, that's done. I always dedicate a show, and this is an easy one. This is a low-hanging fruit one. This is one I do. I did last year, and I'll do it again this year. I'm dedicating this show to our veterans. As a U.S. Army veteran myself, I'm very aware of the sacrifices that are made by our men and women wearing the uniform. And without them, we wouldn't be having this podcast today. We'd be under some other foreign country rule and not have the freedoms that we have. America is the single greatest social experiment ever conducted by man and continues to be so to this day. So thank you very much to every American who has put on that uniform and protected our freedoms so that we can live as free as we do today. So thank you very much, and God bless each and every one of you. The show is brought to you by E4 Strength, my company. Part of being an entrepreneur is you can sponsor your own podcast. So I'm very thankful to be able to do that. E4 Strength is the leader in eccentric strength training technology. For those that are into the strength conditioning world or neuromuscular neurological rehab, eccentrics is the lowering and holding and lowering of weight. So if you are sitting down in a chair, you're eccentrically loading your hamstrings and your glutes. So that's a little physiology lesson there. Our technology allows you to do that with, say, a barbell with 400 pounds. You can hold and lower 400 pounds and lift 200 pounds if you want, and that's with free weights. So eccentric is the safest and most effective way to build muscle, and we have found technology that allows us to do that better than anyone else on the planet. So if you want to learn more about that, go to e4strength.com. All right, my guest, Dr. Nyeisha Dewitt. So everybody knows that I don't do a whole lot of research on my guests for the same reason that you're listening to shows. You want to get to know the person. So what I believe about her through whatever research I may have done may not be what is truly who she is. So I ask one question and one question only, and that is, who is Dr. Nyeisha Dewitt? And with that, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, Matt.
Well, you're in Oakland, California, so we're 3 hours time difference.
Definitely.
And I'm assuming that it's probably not cold there.
Well, it's like, I would say it's about maybe 69 degrees. So it's not cold, but it's pretty mild for us. We just left our heat wave time, and it was really hot. And then we are in fire season and all of that stuff. And it really impacts the climate and the weather. And so I would say that it's pretty mild. Things have calmed down, and we're going gently into fall, I guess. So yeah, it's really a good time of the year. It's pretty outside for sure.
Well, fall's a little different for you guys than it is for us. Today's actually warm. We had been in the 30s and 40s for the last few days, and it got up in the 60s today, and then it's going to drop off again for the rest of the week down into the 40s and 30s again. So fall for us is changing of leaves, and but it seems like these days we're skipping fall and going from summer, a week of fall, and then right into winter. So I'm pretty sad about the fact that, as a kid, fall was my favorite time of year. I'm a sweatshirt and jeans kind of guy, and
fall is beautiful. I used to love walking home from school, the leaves, kicking them, and watching it. It was beautiful. Like, just it was life, even though the leaves on the trees had died. It just felt like life was happening all around us, and evolution was happening around us. So
exactly, it's that feeling of change is good, and the anticipation of that change is what I always enjoy about having 4 seasons here in Philly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I asked the one question, and I'm very excited about your answer. Who is
Yes.
Dr. Nyeisha Dewitt?
Well, I am a mom. I am a daughter. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a very creative person. I am a high school dropout. I am a graduate of University of California at Berkeley, as well as USF, and a couple times I've had 2 degrees from there. Um, I'm an Oakland native. I was reared here. I love my community. I'm a servant, and I really believe strongly in the future generation. And I am part of a movement to make sure that they are empowered to do amazing things when they are our age. So they inspire me. And I'm really moved by the younger generation. I want to do everything I can to impact them and make sure they have an opportunity to be successful.
Well, this is your show. So I'm going to ask questions, and how you answer them and the direction you want to go in is strictly up to you. I'm just going to uncover the nuggets that you give me when you answer a question and try to come up with something ingenuitive to say and thought-provoking and interesting. So you gave us about 10 to 12 different lanes that I can choose from to start. I think it's always best. To go to where you're probably going to be your most comfortable to start, and that's the life you've already lived. Let's talk about what it was like growing up in Oakland, because you did mention you're a high school dropout, but then you mentioned you're a doctor. So there's got to be some funny or amazing stories that go into that journey that you went through.
Yeah. So part of being reared in the 80s. I don't know what era you're from.
I'm 48.
You're 48. Okay, so we're about the same age. But I would say that what was happening in Oakland during my childhood and through my young or my teen life, I would say was a pretty interesting era. It was plagued by a lot of drug abuse, drug use, drug dealing, lots of stuff. And I found myself somehow being sucked into a lifestyle that was not one that I had to choose. And because my mom was, she was a blue collar woman working as a food clerk at Lucky's, making a good living, providing for me. She also dropped out of high school, and I have my matriarchal lineage of we all are dropouts. It was just the story of our lives. And so, but she still had a great job, and she provided for me. I was her only child, and I was in a single parent household. I think that somehow the allure of the streets sort of like got a hold of me, and I wanted to just feel the fire. And sometimes I think when I reflect on that time in my life, I wonder if I did it intentionally because I knew that I had to have that experience in order to have this deep empathy I have for others. But some say that doesn't happen. You can't see the future. I know I'm not a psychic, but I'm just saying something about my past informs the way I am today. And it helps me relate and connect with people, educators, students, parents, and the like, in a way that I think it would be impossible had I not had my life experiences. So that's basically where my childhood was a mix of really comfortable, secure, loving, and safe, mixed with very dangerous, tumultuous, frightening, traumatic, and insane experiences that I would say that I brought upon myself because it was a choice, right? And it was not something a path that I had to go on. I was a pretty bright student and could have just stayed on the path of straight and narrow and gone to college and probably been president of the United States, running for president at least right now. But no, I chose a different path. And while I'm not, excited about it, I'm definitely happy with what I've made of it.
And for everybody listening, we've never met. We've never had a conversation. We sent, I think, one email, and
Yes.
Kara Parrish's agency actually is the one that made the connection for us. Kara's listening. Shout out to Kara. Um,
Thank you.
so you're like the female Black West Coast version of me.
What? Are
It's
you serious?
everything you were saying. I'm like, yep, yep. So we're about the same age. I'm obviously a white male, not a Black female, and I live in Philadelphia suburbs versus Oakland. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I was a 4.0 student. I was raised by a single mom with my older autistic brother, Andy. Um, I had everything as far as love and support, and my mom worked 3 jobs. She worked her ass off just to try to provide, but we still lived in low income housing, and we were on welfare and WIC and all the other social help that was available at the time. But I also found the allure of the streets to be um, something I wanted. And I, when you said almost intentionally put yourself in, it was literally, it took me back to thoughts I'd had. And I wrote a book about my life. And when I was writing that book, I thought, I'm like, did I purposely do this without knowing, so that when I would get on into my adult life and became more mature and had a family and had a career, that I could utilize that knowledge to help people. And I just thought, I was just like, did she read my book?
I
Like, I'm
did
like,
not. I did not. I promise I did not.
but it's weird how, and I think Kara probably, and on some level, knew that this would be a really good conversation when she
Mm,
recommended to have you on the show. So I'm excited to see what, just from the first 7 minutes, I'm really excited to see where we're going with this. So based on your conversation that we've had so far,
mhm.
when the decision to drop out of high school was made,
Yes.
what was just about every decision has some catalyst. What was the catalyst for you, outside of the fact that your mother was also a dropout? What was the catalyst for you to make you choose that route?
I think it was, well, I was bored, right? And it wasn't that I wasn't being challenged, because I was in a program that challenged me. It was the highest achieving track in my high school for college bound students. So it wasn't that the work wasn't difficult. I was just bored because there was no one in the classroom that looked like me. There was no one in the classroom that was excited by the things I was excited by. There was no teacher that connected with me or tried to get me to see how, there was a strong connection with the experience that I was going to have in high school and how that would translate to my experiences in college or as an adult. And I just, it was just so much fun outside. I like to smoke weed all the time. That was what could be more fun than that for a high school student who's like spiraling out of control. I was lost. But no one, and I'm not blaming anyone, but there is a certain amount of blame that all of us can share when you watch a person with a bright future, or not, what you may not even consider a bright future, slip through the cracks and refuse to do anything to try to save them or try to get them out of that circumstance, or to try to help their parents understand the trajectory of that child when they are headed in that direction. And so there were just more exciting things happening outside of my classrooms. And I don't know about you, but if you miss a certain amount of school, you just don't get credit for going, even if you decide to go back. So I think it was 6 days back then. If you miss 6 days and it's unexcused, you just get an F. So why go? So then that is like, it's a waste of my time. If I go, I won't pass. So why should I even go? And there's no recovery from that. And then one semester of that leads to another semester of it. And then finally I moved to Maryland with my cousin. And I was just thinking, something is wrong with this system. It's not me. And I know I thought that at that age. Now, I may not have known that I was going to one day be someone trying to combat chronic absenteeism, which is the work I do now, or trying to prevent young people from dropping out of high school. Again, the work that I'm doing now. It was just that I just said there has to be something wrong with Oakland Unified School District for this to happen to me. And so I moved there, was there for about a semester. and had to be average and hardly missed a day of school. And the things that were different was the fact that my cousin held me accountable. She said, you cannot miss school. You must come to school every day. The other thing is that they had school buses. So every kid rode a yellow school bus. Well, in my community, we had to take public transit, and you'd be sitting next to people who smelled really bad, or someone who was doing weird stuff with his body parts on the bus. And you're like, that's gross. I don't want to be in that environment. And I just want to go to school, and I don't want to have to deal with any of the other drama. Well, that's what it was like in Maryland. We just got on our school bus with all our classmates. We didn't have off-campus lunch, so there was no chance for us to cut class and go get some food and do all the other funny stuff we would do. No one was smoking weed. I don't even know if they had weed. Did they even have weed in Maryland? I don't even know, because I didn't encounter any while I was there. So it's just the environment was different. The expectations were different, and the opportunities were different, and the resources were different. And that was a world of difference for me. And so, although I came back home and slipped right back into the BS that I was into, it still was a glimmer of hope for me that it wasn't just me, that it was my community, that it was my circumstances, that it could have been my household, could have been the people that were around me, and all of that stuff, and the expectations about my future and the lives of my friends. It just, something about it was different, and the manifestation of that helped me understand a little bit more keenly that sometimes it is the environment, it is where you are, it's not just who you are, that can make a difference and impact your life.
I got two really important things out of that, what you just said. Number one, I get it. My background's in human behavior and understanding human behavior and why people do certain things that they do, to include people become part of their environment. The adaptation of your morals, your integrity, your actions, your customs, your traditions are, if you are constantly in an environment, the more often than not, you're going to adapt to that environment. I have a question though. When you went to Maryland, did you go to a suburban school district or an urban school district?
I would say it was suburban. It was a pretty long bus ride, and it was in a nice area. I believe I'm sure that the socioeconomic range was probably all across the board. I didn't know very many people because I wasn't there long, and but I know my friends, ranged from, low income to, mid income, middle class families. But it was just different. The expectations were different. It wasn't fun if you weren't in school, because the fun was in school. You know what I mean? If you wanted to know what was happening with everyone, it wasn't outside in the, front of the school or at the pizza parlor up the street from the school. It was all happening in school. And another thing too is that everyone ate lunch in the cafeteria. Again, there was no off-campus lunch. So having everyone, there was no differentiation. There was no low income versus the rich kids that got to go eat off campus and have lunch catered or whatever. Everyone was in the same category. We all ate together. And that also made a difference, because in Oakland, no one wanted to eat lunch in the cafeteria. That's where all the poor people go eat, and that's like whack or whatever. It's really, it's sad that it feels that way, because there are a lot of kids that don't eat because of that. But in that environment, because again, we were all the same. No one could drive to school. So there was no differentiation with the kids who had a car versus the kids who didn't have a car. So we were all the same while we were in school. So I think that also felt different. And all of those observations were those that I realized at that time. So when I came back home with my, I guess that was like a participatory action research situation that I put myself through. I was like, okay, now I know it isn't me. Let's just dive right back into trouble. So, but yeah, it was definitely the environment and the expectations and how everyone else felt and valued education there. was different than from the way that we viewed and valued education here. All my friends dropped out of high school.
That's a sad statement to make.
It
It is. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of work with both inner city and suburban schools, mentoring kids, and I'm very well aware of the systemic issues
Mm-hmm.
in education. I think globally, I don't think it's necessarily. I think it's more poignant in areas of low income or in urban environments than it is, say, in the suburban areas. But every school district has their challenges and issues, both internally and with the, whether it's parental influence or sports or whatever. There's always going to be issues in the education system. My
Yes.
my question for you is, when you find, what grade did you drop out?
10th.
10th grade. So were you in Maryland in middle school or high school?
High school.
Okay.
So I went there in the 10th grade. It was like a repeat of the 10th grade. So I went to the 10th grade here, but I didn't get any credits for that 10th grade. So when I moved to Maryland, I was a repeat. And no one told me to do it. No one made me do it. I said, I want to go on my own. And my mother was like, okay. She let me do it. And my cousin was like, come on. So that was like, that was beautiful. But I was in the 10th grade, I repeated. So I have my education secondary is 10th grade, 10th grade halfway through. Yeah. So one semester of 10th grade.
So let me ask you, I have one question, which will then take us to the next one. Why did you go back to California? If your mom was okay with you going to Maryland, why did you return back to the place where you knew the odds were against you?
Yeah, I think that part of it was because I didn't have enough money to stay there. I had a job, and there was a predator working at my job who was trying to, had like extreme sexual advances toward me. He was like an older white guy who was just relentless. And then I lost my job when I guess I didn't do what he wanted me to do. And so I couldn't afford to stay there anymore. So that's really what it was. And although it was really sad, I think I'd proven a point. You know what I mean? Like it was a season. It was a reason and a season. It wasn't a lifetime thing. It wasn't meant to be that way. And and what followed was probably meant to be as well. So I think that was the main reason why I came back. I wanted to stay. I was sad to leave, I believe, but it wasn't devastating.
So you return back to California, return back to live with your mom, and you make the decision to drop out of high school.
Yeah, I just got back with my friends, and I think I was going to do independent study because I just didn't want to go to any of the high schools here, and it didn't work for my mind. Like my mind wasn't ready to get back into that. So I tried independent study, but I wasn't good at that because there was just too much fun stuff happening on the streets of Oakland for me.
You sound like you needed structure.
I do. I like structure. I like structure, especially in work and in academics. And I like to free flow with creativity and other things in my life, but I needed accountability. I need accountability more than structure, I think, at that time.
I think we're very similar in the fact that I'm counter culture. Everything someone tells me to do, I do the opposite. It's it's how I live. And oddly enough, I spent 4 years in the Army and 26 years as a cop. But I tell people this all the time. I made them work for me versus me assimilate to them. There are some things that you definitely have to assimilate into if you want to stay employed or stay in the military. But I've found ways to manipulate, for lack of a better word, the system so that it fit my personality and my needs and my wants versus the military or law enforcement. So, and it's been very, when you said you got bored, I literally was like, Jesus Christ, so did I. Like my life has been about how do I stay unbored? And I've worked in 4 different law enforcement agencies, which is In Pennsylvania, if you go from one police department, leave and go to another police department, your pension clock goes back to zero.
Oh, wow.
So I've been a cop for 26 years and only have 13 in my current position towards my pension. And I knew
Wow.
this.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily a career for somebody who gets bored easily.
No, you're supposed to stay put.
Yeah, I can't do that. So
No, right.
I completely am feeling you when you're telling your story and understanding the urges and impulses and needs and wants of a 15, 16-year-old kid who's making choices based on stimulation more so than what's necessarily best for the moment.
Right.
Because that's literally why I think I chose the things that I did, is because I just needed that I don't know if a rush is the right word, but the stimulation of being involved in something new.
Yeah. Yeah. That I would say that I still have that. I still have that challenge, but I think it's a double-edged sword, right? It could be a blessing or a curse, because those of us who think this way we're inventive, we're creative, we are inspired, we inspire others, we are entrepreneurs, we create our own businesses because, and lots of them, we're not afraid to take risks because that's fun. You know what I mean? That's like, let me do this and I'll pursue it. And I was like, I did that, conquered that. Let's next. You know what I mean? This is like conquest. And I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's ADHD because I have that severe. But it is part of my personality, and I still deal with it today. But in that instance, I was like, I'll go back to school and I'll go back home and go back to school. But I should have done it the traditional route if I really wanted to be successful. Not that I would have been, but I at least should have given that a shot since I had been successful when I was there. But yeah, creating new stuff and having new experiences, I'm telling you, either if I'm working someplace, um, I have to have some creative autonomy, you know what I mean? But in my own work, I create a new program probably every year. And that's just my way of reinventing the work, or, improving the work or scaling it up. So yeah, it's still a part of me.
So so what we're going to do a pretty quick systematic approach to from the time you decided to drop out of school until you decided to re-enter the educational world again. So how
Mm.
long of a period of time from the time you dropped out of school till you obviously had to get your GED, and
Mm.
then
Yep.
decided that education in a collegiate environment was a little bit more built to your liking?
It was after I was probably about 20 years old. I took my GED when I was 19. So I was about 3 years disconnected from four, about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years disconnected from school. And I finally realized after a whole bunch of trauma and drama in my life that I did not want to die. I did not want to go to jail. I did not want to have a miserable existence. Um, I saw a brighter future for myself, and I needed to pursue that. And so I did. And so after I took my GED, um, I went to Grambling State University. They accepted me there first because Cal would not have accepted me with my GED. Um, so I was there and I had a baby and I moved back home after I had applied to Cal. I always knew that I wanted to transfer to another 4-year university. Even when I started at Grambling, that was my plan. Like, I'm going to go here for 2 years, and then I'm going to transfer to a larger 4-year, another university to finish my last 2 years. And so I applied to Cal. And there was this beautiful woman, her name is Jessica Brown, who saw my potential and saw that I was hungry for and ready for a change in my life, that I'd already evolved so much over the 2 years that since I was disconnected from school. And she she gave us a chance, and I did well there. I studied sociology, and I love sociology. It's beautiful. And then my ex-husband was drafted to the Atlanta Hawks, and we stayed there for a little while, but his career wasn't long, which most of them aren't very long. But when I came back home, I think there were a couple of reasons why I decided to get my master's degree, and I got it in teaching. But one of the first reasons is because I wanted to be a senator. That's silly. So Hillary Clinton was a senator. She was a junior senator from New York, and it was World Trade Center had just collapsed, and she's standing there with all these guys. And I'm like, oh my gosh, a woman can be a senator? I was like, I'm going to do that. And then so couldn't do that. My background is a little checkered, and I don't think stranger things have happened since I sort of shut down the idea of becoming a senator. But at that time, I was like, I'm just going to go for it. So I pursued education because I was thinking I'd always wanted to be a teacher. It's a noble profession, and I can help kids in ways that teachers did not help me. I can help parents in ways that they didn't help my parent. And so I did that. And then
Wow.
and then after that, I got my doctoral degree because I realized after teaching for a little while that I didn't like the classroom because it wasn't enough freedom and flexibility. It's bureaucratic, and I felt like I was in a box, and I was suffocating in there. And so I wanted to teach teachers. So I got my doctoral degree in organization and leadership. So I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a doctor of education, and I will probably be a professor one day, but not yet. Still a little too boxy for me.
Yeah, when you said you got it in education, the first thing I thought of is she didn't do that for very long. That's the first thing that popped
Right.
into my head was, yeah, I can't see you. Like, my wife is a teacher, my mom was a teacher, and my grandmother was a teacher, my aunts and uncles were teachers. I'm literally, I think, one of the few that didn't become a teacher. And my daughter's graduating this year, and from college, and she'll be a teacher. So I get the mentality of a teacher. And my wife is the most structured and organized human being on the planet. And without her, I would be lost.
Right.
Because I'm not.
Right.
And so when you just from the 8 minutes that we've known each other, I was pretty certain that teaching in a classroom was not necessarily a place you were going to spend 30 years.
No. I was going to do that. I wasn't even getting ready to. Yeah. I don't even know what I was thinking, but I'm not disappointed that I made the choice, but I'm saying, like, what was I thinking? I could never be a teacher. It's just not my thing. I love and appreciate teachers, and I work a lot with teachers, and we have lots of programs where we interact with teachers and education professionals, but no way. I hats off to every one of them, but Lord, no, not me.
So I'm going to give you a psychology 3-minute session, which everything that you've said thus far is a part of a pre-designed, I'll call it, journey that if you had not ventured out into the streets and tested those waters, had you not moved to Maryland and saw what the better education opportunity is, had you not gone back and found yourself into the same situation you left and decided to drop out of high school, had you not spent those 3 or 4 years searching for whatever it is you were searching for, you would not have come to the realization that college was your next step. Had you not gone to Grambling and had a child, you would not have had the opportunity to go to Cal and get your degree and so forth and so on. And had you not done all those things, you would have not found yourself in a classroom, which is where you thought the journey was taking you ultimately. And ultimately it wasn't. It was part of your educational process of becoming the best version of you, which allows you to have more connectivity with educators, kids, parents, civic organizations, your nonprofit. Like it is all part of your step-by-step process for becoming your complete self. So
Mhm.
if you would have skipped any one of those steps, you wouldn't be where you are today. Is that's what I hear.
Yeah, that's what I feel, even though it wasn't, it wasn't like a org chart of,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? It was just like, okay. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, things had to happen for me to get to this point. And even when I was doing my doctoral degree, um, there was something about that too, where it's like, how do you really show people that you can overcome a lot of trauma and BS? How do you do that? And it's like, when I look at my wall, because I have them up, I don't even know if I can show it to you. If you can see it, even it's like causing a big mess. Everything's falling down. It's like, so there are my degrees on the wall, and there's one. Did you see the one that says GED?
Yep.
So that's the one that matters to me. But when I thought about like what I wanted to do, I wanted to be an example to young people, so that if I say I dropped out of high school and I'm Dr. Nyeisha Dewitt, they can say, okay, I can make a mistake, I can fail, and I can get myself together, get on the right track, and become someone successful, and still um, be a person that is driven to give back to their community, and just make a difference in the world. And so that I push myself even harder for that narrative. So a lot of it is intentional, you know what I mean? And even probably the drama and dumb shit I did, that was probably that was definitely intentional, because it didn't have to happen. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I agree.
I think it's literally why we live life, right? Life
Yeah.
is not really for you. It's for those that follow you, and the legacy that you leave for them to follow, and them to, whether it's a living legacy or after you pass, the legacy is the step-by-step process which you lived your life, whether it's the highs or the lows. I mean, I sold drugs in high school, and I've been a cop for 26 years, and I held top secret security clearance. Like, it's not, life is not over when you fuck up once. It's just
It's
not.
it's just not, it's just not. And that's the most important lesson, I think, that I want people to learn from my life, and that's the grace I want them to see. um, when you make mistakes, there's redemption. It's how do you choose to live your life afterwards? We all have to touch whatever fire, or you know, crazy. We have to engage in some level of insanity as we grow and mature, because our brains aren't developed, and the world is funky like that. But once you get it all together, what do you do? And how do you pile good good stuff on top of the bad shit? That's what I say. I'm like, it's like my good pile is like, oh, that stuff is just underground now. It's like beneath the ground, because it almost doesn't exist unless I bring it up. People don't see it on me. They don't see it, hear it when they speak to me. If I didn't tell you about my life story, you probably assumed that it was a lot different than what I've experienced. But I don't deny deny the folks the I don't want to say the pleasure, but I don't deny them my testimony, because it's important to share the trauma, to let people know that you can overcome the trauma, and you can make better choices in your life, and better decisions for future generations. And that's what I do, is for my kids. When I decided to really turn it around, because I was still kind of like, maybe I'll do, it's hard when you are, when you're criminal minded, to turn your life around, when you're like, oh, the streets, and I want to get a hookup, and I want it this way and that way, instead of just like, no, doing it the right way. But it was for my kids. I was like, you know what? I want my son to graduate from high school so he can break this lineage of dropouts. Then I had another kid, and then I had another kid. It's like, there will be no more dropouts in our line. You know what I mean? That just won't happen again, because of the stance I took to make a change, and the choice I made to create a better existence for my kids, and hopefully, all the young people that I encounter and their families, and et cetera.
I think what I hear the most out of you is honesty and realness. Like it's not, you may have the doctor in front of your name, but it didn't change who you are. It's just another level of evolution of who you are. And I think, and as a cop, I wear a lot of different hats in my life. I'm a husband and father, and I own a gym. I train people. I work with professional athletes. I work with people with neurological, neuromuscular diseases. I invented something. I have a podcast. I'm an inspirational speaker. I'm an author. I have a lot of hats, and
I love it. I love it.
but none of those hats individually define me.
Mhm.
It's a part of me. It's a, you know, I've been a cop for a long time. I don't want to be a cop anymore. Like I'm tired of being a cop, and I want to get to the point where I feel comfortable making that decision. But it doesn't mean I don't acknowledge the 26 years that I put in. It's just not who I am. It's part of the full picture of Matt, and the trials, the tribulations, the trauma are all part of us. And if you
Yes.
don't really and honestly share that with kids, especially kids, I mentor kids, and I when I meet with parents before I start mentoring their kid, I give them everything. I wrote a book, so it's not hard to figure out who Matt is, but I
Right.
I tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm going to say some shit that you may not say to your own kids, but this is how I do my work, and this is how I get through to kids, and this is how I get them to find what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what their value is, and what their values are, and where do they see themselves in 10 years, and how do we create that map so they can get there, and how do you make changes if things don't go exactly as you thought, and like all these things. And I said, but I'm going to drop an F-bomb in front of your children. I need you to be cool with that. And if you're
Right.
not, let's just do it now. Let's not start this process. We'll call it a day. And I think people want, ultimately, while they may not say they want it, when they get it, they're like, oh, man, she was real, or he was real. I really
They
appreciate that.
They want real. The world wants real. That's part of the challenge. People are tired of stiff, mannequin, perfect, trim. I mean, like that's everyone. People are tired of perfect because we all know that we're not, and we're tired of being sold the dream of perfect. And there's so much happening in the world that it's refreshing to have people who are willing to share the truth. You know what I mean? Like people want it. They want raw, unedited, unfiltered truth. And when you're connecting with people, there's only one way to do that, and that's to deliver it the way that it is intended to be delivered, in the way that you and I are obviously delivering it to people. And so I don't deny my truth and my past. I ran for city council, and when I was running, there was this guy who was he said he was one of the candidates, and he goes, oh my gosh, because I talk about, I dropped out of high school, and he was like, well, my mom would never have let me drop out of high school, and everyone kind of gasped, because it's like, so he's making assumptions about what type of mother I must have had to have allowed me to drop out of. I was determined to drop out of high school. She was a praying mother. She was a loving mother who sacrificed her own personal peace of mind to watch me go through hell. A child that she loved more than I was her only one. So she loved me more than she loved herself. And until you're a parent, you don't understand that love. And, but I also shared with the group when I kind of came back at him, like, just like I just said it to you, I said, but when you are a dropout, you have to know that you experience the worst atrocities of our existence. You're exploited by older men. You may end up using drugs. You may be a prostitute. You may be, selling drugs. You may be trafficking drugs. You may be, selling hot shit on the streets. Like, because you're not connected to caring adults that can give you structure that you need to be successful. So you are on the edge of life, death, and jail at all times. So I would tell them, imagine me doing all that. I don't care. Put all those labels on my back. I'll wear them whether they're true or not. But I do that because I want them to understand that shit gets real when when you're not connected to school. I don't care how bad the deplorable the conditions are in the school, how horrible the educational materials are, how bad your teachers are. Everything is better than the streets. Everything is better than the streets. And I know that firsthand because of my personal experiences. So again, I share it in a way that's raw and authentic because it's about saving lives and helping people see that failure is just temporary if you can overcome that and forgive yourself for being human. I mean, I'm
Wow.
just saying.
You just went to church there. That was good.
Yeah.
I like that. So that's a great transition. So you've gone the full gamut. You went
Yeah.
from dropout to doctor, and now you are running a nonprofit.
Yes, I am.
That is doing amazing work. I did this research because when I saw the name of it, I wanted to find out what it was. But you're essentially raising money to provide backpacks and school supplies for kids. And you've been doing
Yes.
it for a while, and you've helped out over 100 and some thousand kids. And let's talk about that so people know the work that you're doing, and maybe they can bring it to their school.
Yeah. So for years, people have asked us, what do we do? And the name of our organization is called Oakland Natives Give Back. And I used to try to justify our existence with language that fit the norms, but there's nothing I do that's really normal, right? So we're technically philanthropists, and we consider ourselves a 21st century community hub that is motivated to give, to serve, and to be an example to those who have either moved away from our community or moved away from their communities to our community, that you should connect with the community in which you reside and serve. So I would say that we address some of the most pressing issues of the day, and we partner with other nonprofit organizations. We also have amazing community events, and we fund individuals and other nonprofit organizations to help them do amazing work that isn't basically in our issue area. And our main focus programmatically is chronic absenteeism, because that's what I suffered when I was in school. We didn't call it that then. We called it truancy, which is probably what they called it when you were cutting class every day. We were truant. And so we're trying to combat truancy and chronic absenteeism because we know that it is a crisis in the United States. It's a crisis all over the world, to be honest with you. We just came back from London and South Africa, and there are girls who don't go to school because they're menstruating, so they don't go to school because they're embarrassed or they don't have the right tools and supplies. And so when they miss school, when you're not in school, you can't learn. When you're not in school, you can fall prey or victim to all kinds of deeds and dirty things that could happen to kids when they don't have a caring adult in the household because they're out working or whatever. So it's a major issue, and we are trying our best through innovative programs and ideas that I have discovered in the last 12 years since I've been working to reduce the dropout rate in our community. I've come up with some really cool ideas about how to address the issue. So yeah, that's what I do.
What have you done? What are your thoughts on mentoring and mentorship as far as the part of the solution to the chronic absenteeism?
I think it's an important element. I think it's one of the most successful strategies, especially if you know that a child has deficiencies in their household, or if they have been bullied, or if they are, have any chronic conditions, or even if they're poor and they just need someone to help and talk to them, someone who's relatable. I think it's just important to make sure that it's consistent, that it's an authentic relationship. It's not a transactional relationship, and that mentor has access to all corners of that child's life. That it's not just a segment, like, oh, they come in and they come to the school, and you have to know the parent, you have to know, the student, you have to know the teacher, you have to know the administrators and all of the support crew around the school to really fully wrap your arms around that child and have a relationship where they can count on you, they know you, they can call you. But there are lots of surface layer mentorship relationships, and I understand everyone can't do the deep dive. I don't have a mentee because I would never do it if I didn't. Like you said, you sit down with the parent and you say, F bombs, my real life, no sugarcoating, shit's gonna get real. This is what it is. And that's the way you have to connect with young people in order for them to trust you and for them to believe you when you try to put them on the right path or give them corrective feedback or criticism or whatever you want to call it, or tell them like, you really fucking up. Like, the only way they're going to believe that is if you have broken bread with them, if you have given them their time and made sacrifices to make them feel like you are really connected to me and I can trust you. So yeah, it's very important.
I think there's obviously organizations out there that are doing that, Boys and Girls Clubs and things like that do a very admirable job. But the problem obviously is going to be that deep dive. And
Deep dive.
The surface level stuff is great for the feel good factor. But when it comes to having the ability to access the hearts of children so that they trust, I mean, I'm lucky enough in that my family, my wife and my kids share me.
You're lucky.
And they're willing to, allow me to have relationships with kids that is sometimes more intense than I have with my own children. And my daughter, and I'll give you a real quick example. My daughter is an elite athlete in college, and she's a senior this year and swimmer.
What sport?
Swimmer.
Okay.
So when she was in 10th grade going into 11th, I had already been working with kids and mentoring them, and I'm a strength coach as well. And so I have that side to it too, where I'm helping kids physically achieve things that they want to achieve. And then in addition, that's kind of how I've been doing it as a cop for a long time, but through my business, I have a business called Max Out, which is the shirt I'm wearing, which is a gym, and we do athletic training and things of that nature. And it just started where I was getting all these kids that were coming to me with all these issues outside of strength and conditioning. And I'm like, man, I got an opportunity here. Let's see what I can build. And I ended up building this program, a mentorship program and leadership development program out of Max Out. So my daughter, I'd said to her, I'm always your dad, like forever and ever and ever. I'm your dad, and I love you, and I would die for you. I said, and she said, well, why do you spend all this time mentoring these kids, and why do you strength coach them, and why do you mentor them? And I said, because they asked me to. And I said, if you want me to do that, it's a different person than your father. Like, wow. I'm your dad. My role as your father is to always support you and be there to make sure that I lift you up in every sense of the word and provide for you and do all those things. I said, but as a mentor and a person in that world, that's a different role. And I said, so you need to know that. And I was very clear on what the differences were. I said, but all you have to do is say, I want dad back. And I shut that down, and I'm back. I said, but that's not something you can yo-yo. You don't get to turn that on and off anytime you feel like things are getting weird.
And I want dad tomorrow, right?
So she said, okay, I'm in. And the first 3 or 4 months was a little rough. But then all of a sudden, now we understand the parameters now that she's older. She's 21, going to be 22. And the parameters of our relationship are evolving as she gets older. So she's not a little girl with little girl problems who's emotionally not mature and doesn't know how to handle life. She's got her shit together. So now it's, when it's dad time, dad's there. When she's got questions about training, questions about being a captain on her team, questions about leadership or problem solving, then the mentor comes out. So it's like, it's this connectivity and clarity of communication that allows for true mentorship to happen. Because if you're speaking to them as if you're reading out of an instruction manual, you're going to lose them.
You're going to lose them. They won't trust you.
And I just think, what you're doing is amazing. I love anybody that is invested in kids. I work with a guy, David Charles, I'm from Pottstown, which is a small little urban town outside of Philadelphia. And He's doing some similar type stuff that you were discussing. He's in the schools as a mentor. He's puts on assemblies. He's in every day with the teachers, and we're trying to create. There used to be in our town. That's where I grew up, and a community center, and having the transition from school to the community center. So there's programs and connectivity with him there as well. And we're trying to build this model out, and it's very similar to what you were talking about, and having all these different pieces that are helping within the Oakland Unified School District. And I just think that the similarities are really cool. And I applaud you for A, coming up with the idea, and B, growing it and building it into something that is not just sending out backpacks and pencils.
No, and I think those things are important because it removes barriers when kids are trying to go to school and parents can't afford that. So we give away backpacks, school supplies, shoes, haircuts, all kinds of stuff at our big yearly flagship event. But it's more than that, because we also have incentives, and we may expand our programs. We do, and we incentivize daily attendance with cash grants. So we have a program in Corpus Christi, Texas. It's a very small one that we're piloting there to see how it works in other communities. But we give $500 to 60 kids throughout the year for having near perfect attendance. And when we give them the $500, it's for their family. They can do whatever they need to do with it. We don't ask them like, oh, you have to give us receipts. You can't pay rent with that. You can't pay your car note, or you can't buy clothes for your family, or do whatever you need to do. We feel like they know what they need to do and what's best for their families. But we think it raises awareness. It makes it clear that it's a very important thing when people are willing to invest. And so we do this huge presentation with a check that's really big, so big for some of the kids, too big for some of the kids to hold. And we present it at assemblies, and we acknowledge the success of that child, and it makes other kids want to win the $500. So that increases attendance just by them knowing that there's a chance that they may be one of the 60 kids in the school year to win $60. So I love to talk about opportunities to expand it to other school districts. We've been doing it here for since 2015, but it really works. And it takes a lot of outside of the box thinking to really connect with young people, to connect with their families, and to help them understand that this whole thing, while it might be the worst, boring, and ridiculous, and I think of so many words to describe the process. Most of us didn't have the most pleasant experience. Some of us had amazing, they were cheerleaders and they were basketball players and everybody loved them, but most people had a horrible experience. Education is not the most delightful process of our lives, but it is the most essential process of our lives. It is the difference between being poor or in jail or having horrible conditions in life and being successful and being able to take care of your family and having a healthful life. So we just have to embrace it.
Yeah. And I think, I had this conversation with my son the other day, and, he's a swimmer and he wants to go in the military and he wants to go to West Point, and
Wow.
he's 17, but he's a young 17 emotionally. And literally he's me without all the bad choices. But
because you made them for him, which is great.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
I just think life is, if you're only doing the stuff that you like, life is going to really suck for you, because there's not enough of those things to fill up 24 hours a day. So he had swimming, and it's something very trivial, but it's a learning opportunity. So he had to swim an event that he hates, and he hates it because his sister was great at it, and he doesn't want to do the things that his amazing sister was great at. So therefore he purposely doesn't do well at them, because what's the point? So I had to challenge him, because he raced the race, and I could tell he didn't give 100% effort. And it wasn't about swimming. It was about doing the shit that you don't like to the best of your ability, even if you're not that good at it, because effort means something. And it's not about wins and losses. It's about how hard did I give my very best, and understanding how to get a kid to understand how to give their very best, and what does that look like. And you may always be searching for what your very best is. I got mine when I was 37 years old is when I hit my very best for the first time. And
Wow.
I knew it clearly exactly what I did. And up until then, I thought I'd given my very best 1,000 times until I actually did. And teaching kids to understand that constant searching for learning, searching for effort, giving 110%, what does that mean? And constantly striving for something. I think it starts with showing up every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're doing in inspiring your kids and you are going to, by proxy, just by showing the F up, you're going to be better. And once you show up enough, it becomes habitual. And it becomes
Yes,
something that you count on doing every single day. And it's a constant in your life. And kids, especially in urban environments, don't have constants.
they don't have constant.
There's constant chaos, but that's about it.
Constant chaos, constant trauma, constant craziness. But yes, you're right. That is so true. That is so true. And we say that too. It's like, how do you build healthy habits when everything else is in flux in your life? You know what I mean? And their lives are in flux, and and it causes all the ripple effect of them not going to school is something that I don't even think parents are aware of when they started out with the poor behaviors. And so we're just working to try to combat that, to raise awareness around that, to reward students, and in hopes to change mindsets about education, because I had to literally shift the way I thought about education in order to embrace it the way that I had, because I literally hate everything about a school.
And I think, and I completely get that, but I also think that, sometimes teachers, and taking this from the teacher perspective,
Mm-hmm.
is that when you walk in every day and you have a class full of kids, I mean, it reminds me of the movie Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman, where everybody hates being there and they're only there because they're forced to. Sometimes as a teacher, if you have kids that are A, they don't take it seriously, B, rarely ever show up, or C, there's a few that really want to learn, but they can't because of the environment they're in is so chaotic. As a teacher, sometimes you look at it and you go, what's the point? And I think what you're doing is through the inspiring kids to have perfect attendance and giving them a measurable reward at the end for achieving near perfect attendance. It's probably reducing the lackadaisical attitude, for lack of a better word, of some teachers who may feel, fuck it, what's the point? And
right.
And if you can change both the teacher's perspective and the student's perspective and create an environment that is at least moving the needle towards accomplishing successful behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
I think over time,
yes,
that will become the norm.
it will. And it just takes time. It takes time. I think about 12 years ago, where I was, my mom passed away and I was so empty. I didn't even know what I was going to do with my life, but it feels like yesterday. But in 12 years, that's a child that was in kindergarten and now they're graduating and going to college. You know what I mean? And so if you do something with it's going to be 12 years. It's going to take a whole cycle to eradicate, that horrible and negative mindset toward education, for all of us in the community, just completely saying, you know what, this is what we're going to invest in, and we're going to make sure kids go to school. There are really simple things that people can do. But as much as people know, because they already said in the United States, it's a crisis. They say it in the state, they know it in the school district, that chronic absenteeism is one of the biggest issues that we have to combat. No one invests in it. They don't give money toward it. Like it could be a relationship between law enforcement and schools, because if they're not in school, they're in the streets. You know what I mean? They're not at the library. They're not knitting. They're not somewhere just chilling and at home. Sometimes they may be, but they're doing the wrong thing. So there are real serious dangers that exist in the community when kids aren't connected, and there aren't enough collaborative relationships. There's not enough funding. There aren't enough mentorship programs, and everyone just kind of saying, let's just get together and make a difference. And so I'm hopeful that as we try to expand and do more of this work, that it will become, get the attention that it deserves, and the funding, more importantly, that it deserves, in order for people to continue to do outside of the box, bring outside of the box solutions to the problem.
Well, I could talk to you for another hour, but unfortunately the show is only an hour. So we
Oh,
have
okay.
to start to wrap this thing up, and let everybody know where they can get a hold of you, where they can learn more about the program and everything you're doing. What's the website, all that good stuff.
Oh, so I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as Instagram. The website is oaklandnatives.org. I welcome any ideas, insights. I'm definitely willing to share things that I know. And if you want to talk, offline about, potentially ways that we can partner with your friend and help with the work that he's doing. Because I love the thought of people like really, really giving back and getting into schools and trying to make a difference. So.
Well, that's definitely happening. That's not even a question. So I will, once we get off the show here, I'm going to make a connection between you two. And I think you'll love David. He's one of the most passionate, pure human beings I've ever known. And I think it'll be great, at least for you two to collaborate and just pick each other's brains and see what's working and what's not.
Sure. For sure. Love to do that.
Well, everybody, thank you again for listening to this episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I am your host, Matt Cubbler. Thank you very much to my special guest, Dr. Nyeisha Dewitt, who is doing amazing things out in Oakland. Just remember, kids need to be in school. They need to have that structure, and they need to have a place where they can feel safe and they can habitually learn how to make the right choices and do great things in their life. So thank you very much. God bless, and be kind to one another.